Oh, hey, buddy, it's your old pal Scott, and this is Let's Talk Tabletop. I have heard from a multitude of people in the comments section saying that they have never won a game of Warhammer or whatever war game they're playing. They've never won a single game. There's many, many reasons why you may have never won a game before. So let's dig in. Okay, so you've played 6 months, a year, multiple months, multiple years, a decade? I don't know, I'm being ridiculous, but you've never won a game of whatever you're playing? Well, the first thing to consider is that you may just not be good at the game. And that's not like a get good noob sort of thing, right? But honestly, not everybody's good at everything, right? I really suck at basketball and I have not a single musical note in my body. I can't sing, can't play instruments, I don't hear things in music like other people can. And you might be the same way for wargaming. It doesn't mean you can't play wargaming and try to enjoy it, just like I could try really hard to learn basketball and get better at throwing the ball and whatever. Or I could pick up an instrument. And I could eventually become like okay at guitar or whatever. But compared to someone who's just a savant that's born with those abilities, um, I'm going to have a hard time. And I can't just watch them go ahead of me drastically in skill and be mad about it because we're not fighting the same fight necessarily, right? Some people just take the things. And I'm a firm believer that everybody is created equally. We're just created differently. You, watching at home, may be excellent at basketball or music. And meanwhile, not so good at wargaming. So you do have to consider that. Just understand that not everybody can have the same outcome all the time. It's just not realistic. So, having said that, guess what? This video is sponsored by Brutal Epic, my new release with 6mm mechs and kaijus, and then 28mm superheroes. It's freaking awesome. Go check it out at brutalityskirmishwargame.com. Anyway, back to the problem. The second reason why you may not have ever won a game is that your gaming group may be far more competitive than you are. Now, they always say that you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. Honestly, game stores are location driven, and a lot of times you can't pick your game store. It's like you have one in the area, and that's what you go to, right? And you also can't pick your opponents because that's just who's there, right? So it could be that you are a little fish in a very aggressive pond. And I know I wouldn't do that well in that sort of scenario personally. I'm not an aggressive player. I'm not a competitive player. I don't give two craps about the meta or anything like that. So if I played in a very competitive gaming group, I don't know that I'd hang around that often because it's just not going to be fun. They're going to stomp me every time. And unless someone's willing to play a narrative game or a casual game, we're just on two different planes of existence, right? We look at it differently. And that very well may be the case for you as well. If you've never won a game before, it might be that you just don't match the same competitive edge that your whole gaming group does. And once again, that's not one's real fault. It just happens to be the way it is. So maybe you can find like a online opponent, tabletop simulator or something that's casual, or you might find one person in the gaming group that's willing to like tone it down for you. And then you can still have fun. Or you might try to convince some of the competitives to play some narrative stuff, anything. You're going to have to be assertive about it and you're going to have to make your own fun. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. Or, hey, best case scenario, if you have other friends that do other hobbies, maybe you can bring them into the hobby and nurture them to be casual, narrative, whatever. And maybe that'll work for you. But it also is out of your hands whether or not your playstyle matches your gaming club. I know many gaming clubs because of my convention Shorehammer, and some of them are head and shoulders more competitive than my gaming club. It's just the culture. Number three is something that basically everybody struggles with. I see these boards all the time, and they don't have enough terrain. I'm on my soapbox again, and I actually did a video about this where terrain was a big part of it. How to win more games. You need line of sight blocking stuff. You do. Because the people that rely heavily on a meta list or things that they've practiced a million times, if you change the scenery on them, then it forces them to make decisions. And every decision is a possible mistake. So it will help even the playing field. Also, people even play my skirmish game Brutality. I see their boards online, and of course everybody's free to play however they want, but there's a scary low amount of terrain on there, and I'm thinking, well, shooting units are going to be having a edge on everybody else because they can just see you. There's nowhere to hide. So you definitely want, on any board, you want at least 2 line of sight blocking things in the center line. If it's a 6x4 board like this one, you probably want 4 line of sight blocking things at a minimum on your board. You probably want 10. 10 would be a good number of line of sight blocking. And that doesn't even include like walls and barricades and things that aren't line of sight blocking but still provide cover. You probably want 20 terrain pieces on your board, a 6x4 board. You want 20 terrain pieces and at least half of them being line of sight blocking. And that is how you win more games. Because then if you make better choices than your opponent, no matter how highly tooled their list is, you've got a better chance at least. Am I right? So number 4 on this list is that you may want to research your army. And maybe this is something you've done before, but there's plenty of codex reviews. There's plenty of detailed analysis of what your army does good, what it does bad, and things like that. So you probably should look into that. You probably should look into that. And if you really care about winning some more games, and you've been practicing and you don't think it's a skill issue, and your community's pretty nice, etc., then you may just want to rely more on synergies. And I personally don't like suggesting that, but it would help you win your first game at least, right? If you can figure out exactly what they do well and make sure you do that thing. If your army comes back after they're dead, then make sure they're coming back. Set them up in a position so that they can use their advantages. Arguably, every ability that you pay points for in a war game, even if it's like included in the unit, you're still paying points for it. And if you don't take advantage of that ability, then you're just throwing those points away. Let's say over the course of the game you make bad decisions, or you don't synergize your lists or whatever, which I don't even like synergy in a list. I intentionally don't make synergy in my list, but that's beside the point. You might be down, let's say, 200 points. You might be playing a 1,500 point game versus your opponent, and you're really bringing 1,300 points, because if you paid the points for the unit that has the ability and you don't use the ability, then you basically paid for it for no reason. And that's the way that works. So you should find out what your army does good, maybe watch some battle reports, get some codex reviews, that sort of thing, and then you can hopefully try to strategize a better way to play your army. Number 5 on this list is something that is kind of off the wall, but I would say try to convince other people to play with you narratively or even cooperatively. If you are the weak spoke on the wagon as far as it goes with tactics and things like that, then you may want to play more team-up games. Because if you are even in a pretty competitive atmosphere as far as your game club, then you teaming up, splitting 2,000 points of Warhammer, right? You get 1,000, your buddy gets 1,000, and then 2 other people get 1,000 each. You may be the weak link in that chain, but your buddy will help prop you up. And they can also give you some tips and tricks and maybe go, hey, you want to move over here? You want to do this? Because, like I said, not everyone's good at everything. And not ever winning a game is not necessarily your fault, but that's the first place I would start and really look at yourself and see if you're capable. But playing narrative or cooperative games will also take the pressure off of you. Some people are terrible test takers. They might know the material, but they just freeze up when they know they're being tested on it, right? And the same thing might be for you. You may know how to play your army and all of that, but you get flustered and you get in your own head and all of that when you start playing the game. So if you're playing a narrative game, you can pull back, like I've mentioned many times before, and look at it like a movie and then see what happens, right? Or if you're playing with a teammate, they can help prop you up and help you out. Specifically, if they play your same army, that's even better, because then they know the synergies and they know how to play it, and you can actually learn how to play your army better by teaming up with someone else who plays your army. So those are my 5 tips for getting good in the hobby. Hopefully this is helpful to you. And I would love to know in the comments what else you suggest, if there's more than 5 tips, although I can't imagine me missing any possible tips. But you know what? It's possible. I will allow for the possibility that you come up with some great idea that I didn't come up with, because Actually, in the comments, I'm often surprised. You guys are pretty creative. So let me know if there's anything else someone can do to win their first game after defeat after defeat after defeat. And that would be awesome. Please also like, subscribe, share, all of that. Thank you to all of my beautiful, sexy, good smelling Patreon patrons for supporting my show and keeping me off OnlyFans. I'm telling you, man, without this Patreon, guys, I'd have to take a completely different career. Anyway, I'll see you next week, and check out Brutal Epic at brutalityskirmishwargame.com, as well as Brutal Space and Brutality Skirmish Wargame, all those things. Check them out.